Welcome! It's Rucks, Malls and Oval Balls, and we're back with episode 6 of what we are calling Season 2. And it is me, Dave, joined as ever by our ever illustrious and glorious co-host. It's Rory. Rory, say hello to the listener.
Hello listeners. Hello David, how are you?
I am very well, thank you very much, Rory. How are you?
Oh, yeah. Marvellous. Off the back of a big weekend at a family wedding, so no game for Old Raw this weekend, a lot of our listeners were in attendance, so...
oh, really?
That's always nice to hear. Congratulations, Owen, on your nuptials. Thank you for all the free beer.
Fantastic. Were you getting inundated by fans? Is this what happened?
You know, I was mobbed.
You were mobbed by the family. Well, congratulations to our listeners who are getting married. You've had a name check on the podcast. I'm assuming your favourite podcast. What?
So they tell me.
And Rory's got himself out of a gift giving there, because that's the best thing money can buy, I'd say.
Which is just as well, because I didn't take a gift.
How very generous of you, Rory. Okay, well that means I can't ask you how did Westcliff do in the absence of their illustrious leader?
Not only did the Lions win, the Ones got their first win against Old Northamptonians, no less.
No less than the Old Northamptonians. Well, that is good news for Old Westcliff. Maybe you should go to family weddings more often, Rory.
I'm clearly not needed, which had been rumoured before, but I didn't like to believe it.
Yeah,
but no, massive result it was for the Ones to get their first win, and another good win for the Lions. The train keeps on trucking on. We're double W's.
Double W's. Well, that's great. Well, in my life, Rory, thanks for asking, by the way.
Please, sorry, David, you have something going on, surely.
Man v Fat, not spoken about it for a little while. The North Bristol branch of Man vs Fat, of which I am a member of. Season 2 came to a finale last night, of the league phase anyway, where there are 3 league tables that are to be fought over a period of a few months. The Pitch League for the results on the pitch, the Scales League for the results off the pitch, and the Combined League, mixing it all together. And I am captain of the mighty Saracens, which is the green team, for those who prefer colours. And we didn't win 1 league, Rory.
What?
We didn't win 2 leagues, Rory.
Oh, so far this is terrible news, David. No league wins?
No, the Saracens got a clean sweep, 3 league wins.
Oh my goodness, how many trophies are you taking home? Is that all 3?
All 3 in the pocket. But
even with your post gallbladder bounce?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because I know some of them are listeners as well. Full credit to the other members of the green team who, without doubt, probably, in spite of my best efforts to sabotage this season by putting on weight in a weight loss journey sort of event, we still managed to come out on top. That says lots about the others in the team, and ignoring me as their captain, leading not very well by example. So fair play to them, and fair play to all the other teams who really.
Yeah, well done to all the lads, and then everyone involved in Man v Fat Rugby, because it's a program we're very keen on. We're obviously hoping that David will reaffirm his efforts to start dropping weight again come the next season, but at least the other lads didn't shirk their responsibilities.
Absolutely, and next season I'm gonna say this now. It's not gonna happen, but I'm gonna try and push for a Hall of Fame sort of performance where I'm gonna try and lose weight every single week. But these are big words.
It's huge words, but I know you're capable of it, David. Even if all of your organs are working fully functionally, I'm certain you can lose weight.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I'm a man of many words, but not so many actions. But we shall see. But I think that covers flirty banter, Rory. It's not been particularly flirty, but we can move on because this podcast isn't about me. It's not about Rory. It's not about what goes on in our lives as much as we like to pretend it is. This is about rugby it's not only about rugby in the Gallagher Premiership, but it's the only rugby going on at the moment we can really talk about. So we're going to talk about Prem Rugby, and we're going to talk through the 5 games that took place in round 3 this weekend in vast detail. So if you love the detail, if you love the gnaws, you're in the right place. If you find all that really irritating, I'd recommend listening on 1.5 speed, just to make your life a bit easier. Just
no, at a half speed and really stew in our knowledge.
All that. So, as ever, Rory, we're going to start traditionally with the Friday night kickoff. And obviously, scratch that, Rory. Actually, I'm going to take us, rewind a bit, Rory. This weekend was the Derby Day headline weekend that often gets pushed out. We spoke about it last year that we felt it was a bit of a missed target, that it wasn't really pushed enough.
Yes, it was in the gap week, wasn't it? Where it was one. Yeah,
it was. Do you feel like it was any different this time around? I'm asking that slightly loaded because I have my feelings that I kind of think once again probably not pushed as much as it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Derby Day narrative really landed this weekend, but I think it might be because it's too early in the season. You don't really have the storylines yet in how the season's going to go, barring one or two examples. I think it's still the state of the season's still a bit nebulous, I suppose, but I think the general upward trend of how Prem Rugby is being marketed is still on going well, and I think generally the weekend was well marketed. I just don't think that Derby Day narrative really landed, which is it's
to be understood.
And in some ways it's sort of secondary. If you can get another narrative going to boost that, then great. And I think they should continue to do that. And the Derby Day weekends, I think, is a good idea. I think the problem you've got is, and we touched on it early on in the season, the Prem season's quite broken up.
Yeah.
Across the whole year, really. We're very nearly into autumn internationals. Yeah. Then we're into Europe. Then we're back for a bit, back into internationals, back into Europe. It's difficult to actually get a thread going. And I think that was something you touched on quite early on. And actually, I think something like a Derby Day weekend does get lost in that.
Yeah, well, for instance, put into context to that, for my Northampton Saints season ticket, I'm not going to be watching Northampton Saints at home in the Prem for 7 or 8 weeks now.
Which, when you've paid for a season ticket, feels a bit odd.
You get the Premiership Rugby Cup and I get the Champions Cup, but as a competition, Prem Rugby, I'm not seeing them at home for 7 or 8 weeks. And I think that emphasises the point about how it is a very staggered competition.
Yeah.
Can't avoid it. It's unavoidable, the way the rugby calendar's set up and the way you do. It's not like football where you can have midweek fixtures. That's just not feasible, I don't think, in professional rugby.
No, I don't think so. I just don't think you could possibly expect players to play twice in.
No.
Well, let's say less than 6 days, probably.
Well, if you consider it would be, say, a Friday night, Wednesday night, Sunday. That would be 3 games in 8-9 days. It's not doable. Not doable.
You'd batter players doing that, and actually, the rugby would suffer for it. But so yeah, I would agree that as a derby weekend, that didn't quite land. But as a weekend of rugby, I still think pretty good.
Oh, yeah, do not get me wrong. I am not playing down the quality of the rugby this weekend, as I'm hoping we will be able to touch on over the next hour or so. But I suppose my only other question around this, Rory, as a Gloucester fan that you are, do you get excited about the prospect of watching, say, an East Midlands derby or watching Sale versus Newcastle because it's a derby, or is that just something that is kind of irrelevant to you as a fan who's obviously going to get up for Gloucester versus Bath because that is your derby? So I think my point is, at this moment in time where rugby is still growing, a derby is only something that is exciting if you're vested into that derby.
Yes, but I would probably say that is true of derbies in all sports.
I think the angle I'm getting at, so like the Manchester derby, for instance, in football, because their fans are worldwide, it's a much bigger event. So it's when you market it, you're not marketing to Manchester locals, you're marketing to the world.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think what you also have to take into account is that even regionally, rugby is still quite small. I mean, let's be realistic. Yeah. Yes, it was Gloucester's derby weekend, but we're playing Bristol this weekend. We've got Exeter, coming up after that.
Yeah.
it's not like we're short of derbies really in the West Country.
Yeah. It might as well just be a Southwest League at some point.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. So I think your issue is always going to be that there just isn't a large enough fan base to create that kind of fervour. And an East Midlands derby, it's fierce, and it is one of the great derbies between Northampton and Leicester. But let's be entirely realistic. Northampton and Leicester are not exactly two global metropolises that attract
yet.
Yet. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing saying that Northampton won't be just like Manhattan one day.
Hey.
But right this minute, it's mostly just got that big chimney where they test elevators or whatever it is in there.
Yeah, and the home of Carlsberg.
And the home of Well, isn't that Denmark?
Well, the home of British Carlsberg. So and shoes.
And shoes. They'd love a shoe.
Yeah, we love a shoe. Okay, well let's move into the rugby, Rory. Whilst we pontificate about the intricacies of Derby Day fixtures. Friday night, Sale Sharks versus Newcastle Red Bulls. Where do we start here? Is this a sign of more things to come for Newcastle Red Bulls? Because it was a bit of a canter for Sale. Let's just be honest. Let's not beat around the bush.
Yeah, they really didn't have to get out of third gear to put 50 points on Newcastle here, did they? I mean, look, I think we still have to accept that Newcastle are awaiting some signings to be integrated back into the team.
Yeah.
Could well make a big difference. And I suspect, will be doing a bit of short-term shopping as well to help bolster some of their ranks. I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two short-term contracts from the Southern Hemisphere come in on, big paydays for a few months just to boost things a little bit more. But you have to be realistic about it. Newcastle looked pretty abject in this one, if we're being totally frank. It's one of the things that got really highlighted, I think it was Austin Healey got a bee in his bonnet about it in the game, was the lack of pressure on Ford for when he was kicking. And actually, once they pointed that out, you start going, oh, actually, they're not making those double efforts. Ironically, the sort of thing that a Steve Diamond team is typically emblematic. So correlation does not equal causation, but early evidence suggests that there's not been a post-head coach switch bounce.
No.
It's going to be tough for them when they're making just such basic defensive errors. I mean, the first try for Rob Dupree, when Gus Waugh was able to get that offload away down in the corner, and really he should have been buried. And anyone who's watched Gus Waugh on the telly will have a desire to have buried him, even if you're a Sale fan, probably, to have buried him into the advertising hoardings. The fact that they didn't do that is not a great sign of the physicality they're bringing at the moment. And it didn't really get better from there. I mean, Roebuck's first try, it's a really nice running line from him, but he canters through 7, 8 Newcastle players untouched.
Yeah.
And Luke Cowan-Dickey, just tap penalty, 5 metres. They don't stop him, and he spins and puts it down.
That shouldn't happen, really, should it? Not in the elite level.
No, you should never be able. That is, even at Lions level. I would struggle to, and I'm a big lad. I don't make that kind of ground. Admittedly, I'm less explosive than Luke Cowan-Dickey, but I'm not
only fractionally, that, Rory.
Only fractionally. But I'm also not being tackled by Amanaki Mafi either. So
true. Yeah, true. Very good point.
It's all relative. And it's the Red Bulls set piece dreadful. Their line out. How many mauls do they knock on? 3 or 4?
For me, that's one of the biggest surprises for me this season. Considering, say, 2 players they brought in, George McGuigan, Freddie Clark, played together last season at Gloucester at a side that had a strong set piece. It seems like that connection, where's it gone? Unless all the other 6 just are on a completely different planet, I just don't see why there isn't that connection that they could build on.
It has to be a mentality issue, really, because
is it a belief thing?
A line-out maul is a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of physicality and confrontation in it. I'm not saying these are all the easiest things to execute.
No, absolutely not.
But knocking it on 3 or 4 times as you come down for a line-out maul, that is criminal. That is being able to at least get a maul set up is table stakes at this level. It's
basics. It is basics.
But yeah, unfortunately, the only positive thing for Newcastle was how good their away kit looked.
Like, I think it was voted the best kit in the league, wasn't it? Someone who ran a vote.
I think it's earned that. I think it's a really nice kit, and sadly,
that might be the only win they get.
Yeah, it's just a shame because obviously we started the season, and look, we were up front, mate. We didn't think they'd have a massive bounce, but I didn't expect them to be.
I thought they'd be more competitive,
poorer than they were last season so far.
Yeah, I thought they'd be more competitive than they have been. I saw someone talking about, yes, they brought in some really good names who have some Prem experience. Is this players whose peak is behind them? Like, would you say these players that they brought in would walk into other Prem clubs at the moment? And I got thinking, Fergus Lee Warner, great player. Would he walk into every Prem club at the moment? Not certain.
No, I mean, look, if you wanted to be unkind about it, you could say there are reasons why these players weren't under contract at that time. And that's the reality. Surefire stars at Prem level are not available at that time of year. You have to they had to make do with what was available.
Yeah.
But as you say, Freddie Clark has been one of Gloucester's best performers in 3 years. Fergus Lee Warner is a really high level performer. George McGuigan at one time was one of the most bankable try scorers in the league off the back of mauls. And at the moment, they're not really executing.
Yeah, I think, are we seeing the end product of a side that's gone through huge change through the off-season, off the pitch, all of a sudden change in the coaching department at quite late notice? And I would suspect the players didn't see it coming as well, from kind of how I'm witnessing it. Are we just seeing that amount of change is just unmanageable from any angle to kind of keep a product going on the pitch of any quality, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they look a little bit in disarray.
Yeah.
On the pitch, and maybe that can be cobbled together. Look, I mean, Alan Dickens is a really highly rated coach.
Yeah.
He may well be able to pull the threads together over the next couple of months. Hopefully be able to get some momentum in the Prem Cup, maybe, and just start building solid connections. But at the moment, it looks pretty dire, and none of these things are easy fixes because they're already starting at disadvantage in a lot of different ways, and they don't look like they've kicked on at all. Which is it's just going to be a tough pill to swallow for them, and they're going to need to keep the faith, and they're going to need Rebel to keep the faith as well, obviously. And hopefully they can turn it around sooner rather than later. But I would expect, certainly pre-Christmas, it's not going to get a huge amount better.
Yeah, I fear you may be right, but we've always said from the start this is a long-term project. When you see the Newcastle fans in like Facebook groups moaning about it, I was like, you need to look at the 3-5 year picture, not the 3-5 month picture. On the other side of this fixture, Rory, some notable performances from some of the Sale Sharks lads. One name that I particularly want to draw attention to. I very rarely do this to a player coming off the bench, but Nathan Jabulu, I genuinely think an absolute coup of a signing the way he started this season.
Yeah.
Looking how his old club are kind of faring as well. Thoughts on Jabulu?
I mean, I like him a lot. I think it looked a good signing as a squad player when it first came out. Before I knew masses about him, I'd watched him a few times here and there. Following the story a little bit more over the last few months, you start to think, okay, there's definitely something in this. The boy has got a lot going for him. And then actually watching him get proper run-outs at this level, you see, there's
serious player.
There's really something in this. Not the finished article. I think his darts are still not there, and that might again, boring line-out stuff, but it's a lot of different moving parts. Not everything will be down to the hooker's throw as much as it is often made out to be that way.
Yeah.
But there are some issues there, and he'll need to tighten that up if he's got ambitions to go as far as. Certainly, I think he can go. But to be someone with that explosivity in the loose, a good turn of pace, real scrummaging shape and strength, and to be a genuine competition for someone as good as Luke Cowan-Dickie, I think people can afford to get properly excited about him. I was trying to think of what sort of player he sort of reminds me of. I mean, I think there's a little bit of there's quite a South African style, I think, to him in some ways, very confrontational type of ball carrier.
Yes, absolutely.
He carries similar to like a Bongia Manambi, even a Malcolm Marks to a certain extent. But I also get the impression he's got a real appreciation for the kind of classics of an English hooker. Seems like a guy who likes a maul, likes a scrum. He's got that kind of.
I see a little bit of the Tom Dunn game in him.
Well, Tom Dunn was the name that I was about to mention. Yeah, there's a bit of Tom Dunn in the way that he approaches the game as well. And actually, if you can combine those kind of traits, you are literally the full package there. Yeah. So he is one that I am genuinely excited to see how he develops. I think maybe probably a bit early at international with the competition ahead of him, but there'll be no doubt he's on the radar.
Yeah, this World Cup cycle may be too soon with, like you say, with the names currently there, but the likes of Jamie George, Cowan-Dickie, whether they go beyond this World Cup cycle, then we're talking the Theo Dans, the Jabulus, or Greys, whoever else gets their name in the frame, to a Pelotu.
I think he's in direct competition right this moment with Blamire for that third spot. Yeah. Blamire's probably got the edge on him because he's got that bit more experience, but you
want to keep an eye on.
You'd be looking over your shoulder if you were Blamire, certainly.
Yeah, well, if I was Luke Cowan-Dickie, I'd be looking over my shoulder at club level as well.
Yeah, 100%.
If he keeps coming off the bench and performing as he does, he can only do that for so long without thinking, let's get him starting week in, week out. And that's probably Sanderson's plan, is to keep the standards high. Elsewhere in the Sale ranks, any other players impress you?
Well, I mean, you have to mention Roebuck getting a hat-trick. Yeah. An inspired pick by myself in my fantasy team, I must say. Pulling that one out of nowhere. Wish I captained him. I think he's one his stock's been rising for a couple of years. Really took his opportunity when he got it in the Six Nations and over the summer.
Yeah, it was very good over the summer.
And actually, I think when he first burst onto the scene, if you like, then he was probably seen as more of just a high ball chaser and regatherer.
Yeah.
Actually, his all-round game is now getting much more akin to someone like Tommy Freeman.
It's the comparison I'd make as well.
Obviously similar sized players, really similar stature to them. But Tommy Freeman's got such a great skill set. If Roebuck can bring that as well, on top of his physicality and his ability in the air, you start to ask real questions about who your best back three is for England. And he's, really good feet, real pace to him. The strength to finish his third try, I think it was, through two players, and he did a very similar job against Wales in the Six Nations. So, you can make comparisons as to how strong the defences were in both examples. But, just the fact that he can do that, it's an interesting prospect that picking that back three for England at the moment.
I am looking forward to the podcast where we will be debating the England squad for the autumn internationals, because the depth at the moment, particularly in that position, is incredible. So I'm looking forward to that debate.
We're going to touch on a few more players who are in that debate later on. But
I think we may do.
But no, he's definitely one who has started the season like an absolute freight train. Joe Carpenter's another who's playing well. Ben Bamber's one who's really come on.
Stock is rising. Stock
is really rising there. Doug Dale again, I think's been really good. But I'm really liking the look of Rod and Apoka Fajori at prop again.
Oh, it's just that Sale front row is something else, isn't it?
Such a good unit.
Yeah.
It's I think the South Africans really proved this in the last couple of World Cup cycles, is that you have to think about front rows as units rather than as individual players. And if you're picking scrums, if you look at Rod, Cowan-Dickey, and Apoka Fajoy, and actually Jabulu as well in there, they're all such similar kind of height and not necessarily exactly the same shape, but similarish stature that when they get their scrummaging right, it's very difficult to shift them because they're so in sync.
Yeah.
You could do worse than picking an all-sale front row either to start or on the bench for England because they're
the Shark Tank. Send on the Shark Tank.
I mean, I don't hate that. I don't hate that as a moniker in the slightest.
Feel free to use that one. TNT Sports, BBC, ITV. Just remember, you heard it here first, people. The Shark Tank. So I think in summary, Rory, this game, if you hadn't picked up the tone, it was a 50-point hammering. Sale Sharks winning 57-5 against the Newcastle Red Bulls. Big bonus point win for Sale. More questions than answers for Newcastle. Let's move on. Second game, Rory. Bristol Bears versus Exeter Chiefs. The Bears licking their wounds, quite literally. The Chiefs on a high going into this game. I had lofty expectations for a Chiefs win. I know you predicted a Bears win. I know you were about to say that. Let's face it. Let's talk about the 20-minute red card rule again, because I think that, again, had a part to play in this.
It was a Stonewall red.
Yes.
And actually, it's not as bad as the Michelow one in the first week.
Is the 20-minute red card now a cop-out for a ref?
Look, it's a poor challenge. It's a really poor challenge. And it's not, I'm not going to dig him out enough to say that he's deliberately done that to Ross Vincent, but he's not tried not to do it. It's poor from Tom Jordan. And on top of anything else, if you're a Bears fan, he's left you in a real hole because it's another backline player they're losing out on. Yeah,
that'd be minimum 3. Well, looking at how long did Michelow get? Did he get 4-week ban?
Michelow got 4. I would imagine this would be a 3 or 4 weeker.
Yeah.
Genge limped off as well in this one.
Carrington as well.
Carrington off with an HIA.
I saw in the week Pat Lam saying he's never seen anything like it, and I could echo that. As a fan, I don't think I've seen a team decimated by injuries quite so much.
Just an absolute massacre so far. We're going on a bear hunt. They need some.
They do need some. They need more than Matthias Moroni. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I think the break in the league that we spoke about earlier, I think is coming at a good time for them at least.
Yeah.
In this fixture alone, they somehow pulled off a win, Rory.
Well, if you're an Exeter fan, you have every right to be mightily frustrated how Exeter didn't come away with a win in that one. All of the pressure in the second half, Bears barely got out of their own 22.
Yeah.
Are Exeter just absolutely desperate to find a player who they can trust to kick for the sticks? Because how many penalties did they turn down points on?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know how many they turned down, but it was too many. The answer is too many.
Given they were only a point down at the time, to not convert any of that into points in the second half is just ludicrous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really inaccurate, actually. In the first half in particular, they had quite a lot of possession. And, it looks quite nice. It's they're pretty fast moving the ball from the breakdown. It's quite nice patterns. They just don't make any ground.
Mm.
And you'd think with, you've got Manifo Oboso, you've got Paul Brown-Bampo, you've got Fissalau, Vincent, you've got a massive front row, Zamboni, Roots, even Slade, none of them could make ground. It's just, the Bears are not a bad defensive unit, but no one's going to sit there and tell me that the Bears is the most physical defense in the league.
Well, they were renowned last year for having a motto of "let's not bother training defense because we'll just score more tries than we concede."
Yeah, okay. Well, you're right. Last year they were basically Swiss cheese,
but then again, last year they didn't have 20 players missing, and we did see a very different style of play this week, I would say.
Well, we did, but even then, even in that game, they actually weren't. They tackled very physically, but they weren't flying off the line.
They
weren't putting massive amounts of pressure on Exeter. They were just basically leaving the breakdown alone by and large, unless a really obvious opportunity for Hardin or Ogray typically appeared. And the rest of the time, they were just sort of waiting for Exeter to approach them and then just tackling them at the game line.
Yeah.
Exeter went through a few examples where they did 7, 8, 9, 10 phases and made virtually no ground. And it's just...
It's poor game management, isn't it?
Why? It's poor game management, but it's just poor. It's just poor to have that much ball and make no ground whatsoever. I mean, someone surely got to cut a line or just run it up the guts.
Yeah, I still think like you need someone like a Slade, and I think this is the Exeter's big problem in the 10 shirt. Harvey Skinner's had a fairly decent start to the season, but you need someone that if you're getting to the 5th or 6th phase and you're not making any ground, to do something different. Like you don't just keep repeating the same thing that's not working because it's going to keep not working. You need to have different ideas, and I think that's where they're lacking. I was speaking to an Exeter fan at Man versus Fat, and they said that they think part of the problem is that they've almost become so reliant on Feo Boso and Brown Bampo to be the game breakers and the line breakers that they come searching for the ball all the time in the middle of the field. The second that stops working, it means they're out of position quite a lot of the time. Then they're not on the edges where they need to be to kind of break the line on the edge. And perhaps they're just falling into this trap of becoming quite reliant on just one or two rather than having other options.
I mean, so much for them now seems to hinge on Lenny Catal hitting the ground running, which he
may
every chance he will do. Although I think he's probably in the Wallabies squad, isn't he? So he's not going to be in. He's not going to be in immediately. They just look like a team desperate for a game breaker in the middle of the park, because at the moment, Fizzleow, Vincent and Kane James are all really, really good players, but they're not massive physical players. Ethan Roots is a really good defensive player, but he's not really an attacking game breaker. Russ Tuima doesn't really seem to have kicked on. Chunsa doesn't really seem to have kicked on. Their front rowers are big lads, but they're not dynamic ball carriers.
They're set piece warriors more than anything.
The front row's picked for the set piece, and
is what you're saying.
That's not a great ball carrier realistically. Zamboni looked all right, but he's a 20-year-old. I do like.
They're
just missing something in the middle,
and I feel like I should correct you, because I do appreciate you keep calling him Zamboni, but it's Zambonin. I like Zamboni, but just before
I might stick with Zamboni.
I like it. So are we seeing the fact that they're waiting on Tom Hooper maybe, but they haven't replaced Jacques Vermeulen?
Well, I mean, it was a tough man to replace. Tom Hooper, I think actually Tom Hooper isn't in the Wallaby squad, so he may be coming in quicker. But yeah, I mean, Tom Hooper and Lenny Catal probably do make a big difference to that team. That's probably a fair assessment of it, but it still hinges quite a lot on quite a small number of players, really. It just feels like a team that is playing a style of play that isn't quite suiting the personnel at the moment.
Apparently some Exeter fans are suddenly starting to question whether Rob Baxter is actually the Messiah, and they fully accept his statue is fully warranted outside Sandy Park, but maybe, just maybe, they might be starting to think that maybe he may not be the man to steer them for the remainder of eternity.
Well, the coaching merry-go-round at Sandy Park hasn't really yielded anything over the last couple of years, has it? So it's possible a new voice is needed. But
yeah, well, and they were able to clutch defeat from the jaws of victory in a game that they really should have won. Let's face it. Bristol getting the points. Fair play to them with the squad they've got and the players getting injured again in the game. And I really didn't see them getting a win here. But hey, sometimes I'm wrong and sometimes Rory's right. So the game ended 18-14. Ashton Gate wasn't a massive spectacle, I'd say. Good game of rugby, but let's move on to the next game, Rory. One that I'm keen to discuss. The East Midlands derby, Northampton Saints versus Leicester Tigers. Returning Lions 4 for Northampton Saints. Leicester keen to upset Northampton once again at home. I was there. I was in the crowd, surrounded by lots of one-eyed Saints fans, as you like to point out. So before I go on to my experience, as someone who would have watched the game with a slightly less green-tinted lens, what did you make of the game, Rory?
A really interesting game, really. I think you could probably make the argument that Saints got a little bit out of jail with this one, not because they didn't deserve any of their tries, and not even because Tigers were brilliant. I would probably still say that Saints were quite scrappy.
Very scrappy. And I'm guessing the angle we got took good fortune from this funny-shaped ball that we like to watch play.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Bellew's chip and chase fell kindly, but you make your own kind of luck with that. He spotted the opportunity and he took it. So I don't begrudge him that at all. I think they just probably shaded this one, but let's be real. Tigers got 4 penalties in this one and scored a couple of tries. Actually, if Tigers had converted some of their pressure into points, this wasn't necessarily a runaway game for Saints, but they do score really good tries. You can't argue that. Yeah. Bellew's first try was a great sweeping move from end to end off the back of I think it was an overthrow from Tigers, wasn't it?
Yeah. Their line out went a little bit to pot.
Yeah. Finn Smith, the first try, that came out of Alex Mitchell somehow managed to dummy everyone else on the pitch and go down the blind side and just managed to feed in Finn Smith from there. Great bit of play from him, but it's really just come off a bad defensive read from Tigers. Todoro, his try was particularly good. I thought that was a particularly good team try. Yeah, Tommy Freeman really, really heavily involved. I think that was the moment when you actually looked the best in terms of a whole move. But then he also then makes the break and feeds in Pearson for his try just before half time, and that maybe was the game breaker.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting game watching it because I never really felt like either team had full control.
No,
like in the stands. But as I was watching that game, if I hadn't known the score, I'd have been watching that game thinking no team wants to win this.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. So when I looked back at the stats, I think it showed how little of the ball Northampton had compared to Leicester. Yeah. So I think we had to absorb a lot of pressure. And then I think one of the good things with Northampton is when they do get the ball, they tend to be quite clinical, although the first half was very scrappy. There was a lot of mistakes. The feeling around the ground was, please, let this not be another second half capitulation.
Yeah.
So thankfully that didn't happen. It was at least a resemblance of an 80-minute performance, although it was a bit touch and go at times. But generally, certainly from where I was sitting, there was a huge difference in how the backs' moves were flowing. Like when they are in full flow, they are so exciting and brilliant to watch. And I think when they are on song and they're all on the same page, I don't think there's another back line out there in the league that is quite as exciting to watch. Maybe I'm not sure what the correct word is, but it's really quite something when you watch it in person. It's their ability to execute skills under speed and pressure. Yeah,
is probably second to none in the league. I mean, Bristol fans will be screaming at us for not saying them, but actually, Bristol cough up more opportunities than they take a lot of the time.
Yeah, their style's more harem scarum, where I think the Saints style is much more stylized and it's deliberate and it's planned.
I do think that's a fair assessment. I think I would have said last year Gloucester's backline was probably in a similar state. Yeah. Not so much this year. It's when you watch a backline where everyone is really sure of their job and also sure of their options, and they're all working in a fluid way where if someone changes the options, everyone else knows exactly how to move and how to execute and how to take advantage of that at the right time. That's what Northampton are really good at.
Yeah.
Because actually, it's not that they're playing loads of really set moves all the time, but what they all seem to understand when they get the ball. I guess it's be similar. Most similar analogy I could think off the top of my head would be when you're watching a really good drive in NFL, and there's plan A. There's the route. There's plan A for the route. Then there's plan B, and there's plan C, and then there's plan D, and everyone knows as it evolves where they need to go to execute the next plan. And I think Northampton are the best at that, in that everyone seems to understand, okay, we're going for this. If that's not quite happening, we're doing this. If that's not quite happening, we're doing this. But they're all moving, they're all in motion the whole time, which makes it, I think they have the most attractive attacking rugby in the league.
And I think it's also worth adding to the context in this fixture alone. Again, injuries. Lost George Hendy after 20 minutes, Tommy Freeman just after half-time.
I was going to bring this up. How are you feeling about prospects having lost both of those now? Do we know reports on injuries yet?
Wednesday. So, well, to the listener, today is when we'll be waiting for the injury update to come out from Phil Dowson. The fact that they let Freeman come out after half-time makes me hope that it's not something serious, because if it was more serious, they would have took him off straight away. But I did have my doubts when he just pulled up after collecting that high ball and there was like no one around him. That is usually a red flag for something that needs to be happening. So I was surprised he came back out after half-time. Hendy, he's very unlucky with injuries. I would not be surprised the way he had to be helped off. If that's maybe another lengthy layout, I hope not.
It's such a shame, because actually the starting backline,
we just never get to see our full strength backline. We just don't ever get to see it.
As a starting backline, it looked good, and it looked good for the first 20 minutes or so when they had opportunities. I say Litchfield, I think, is a really good player. He did, particularly last season, did a really good job on the wing. I know it's not his natural position, and I thought Tony Bellew did a very good job standing in at fullback. But yeah, obviously Furbank's out. Ram, I think, is still out, isn't he?
Yeah, Slight Holmes out.
Slight Holmes out. Well, I saw a picture of him this week, and
looking
he's looking
swole.
Real swole.
Yeah. But all I can say is, thank God, our man, our Italian stallion, Eduardo Todaro, is hitting the ground running earlier than we anticipated. That man, he's quickly becoming a fan favourite.
Do we think senior Italian call-up incoming? Because I'd love to see him with Capuozzo and...
I think maybe autumn, maybe too soon. If he keeps getting game time, I can see him getting a Six Nations call-up. Especially if he keeps playing the way he is. You have to remember that he only just qualified for under 20s last year. So
it doesn't look out of place physically, does he?
No, and he's one of those that kind of punches above his weight. He seems really hard to stop. He always fights for extra meters. I'm loving it. He is quickly becoming a fan favourite. But I don't want to turn this into a Northampton Saints specific.
No, we should touch on Tigers.
Well, no. Yeah. Before Tigers, I know injuries are bad, but sometimes they affect referees as well, Rory. And for the second time already this season, a referee is down. It's an injury plague is going on, Rory. Not even the refs are safe. What's going on?
Someone's put a curse on the league. No one is safe at the moment. Yeah, it's weird. I think before this season, I'd seen a referee be substituted
maybe once,
2 or 3 times, and now it's happened twice in as many weeks. It's weird.
It is weird.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going on at the moment. No one seems robust.
The refs are in danger. Someone needs to keep an eye out. And it's interesting because it's bringing refs onto the pitch who I've not heard of before. And I think it's safe to say the perhaps one-eyed crowd at Franklin's Gardens, although I'm not going to suggest that they are one-eyed at all because I am amongst them. We're not particularly fond of the referee that stood in for Luke Pearce. But then again, we're no refs ever loved by a crowd. But yes, let's talk about Leicester. I think the first thing I want to touch on, Rory, and from the comfort of my seat in the church's stand, the first thing that I took note of and wanted to bring to this podcast was to talk about Amika Iliaioni, and I feel like he must listen to us because he was like, Tom Willis isn't the only number 8 who runs with hate in his eyes, because I saw it.
High knees.
I saw
high knees on his break.
Yes, and I was like, that's Tom Willis-esque, and I thought he's listening to us because.
Well, I was surprised to see him picked at 8.
Yes,
I've never seen him picked at 8. I mean, obviously he's perfectly capable of it as he's proven. And I guess they wanted to get another fetcher and Rafael on the pitch. I'd hoped he was a player who could be rangy in the loose, and he more than proved that. Particularly for Stewart's try, really what they can try. Before we touch on that, Freddie Stewart, excellent game,
brilliant game. Yeah, I think that's his best game for a while in a Leicester shirt.
Yeah, superb under the high ball as he often is, but just all round excellent. I thought.
Yeah, it was absolutely imperious in the air. It was very annoying.
Yeah, but yeah, for Amika,
outside bet England squad.
Well, I say we're in danger of putting the cart up in front of the horse on this one because we know how tough it's going to be to break into the back row of England, and there's a lot of competition there. What I will say is, if England are looking for ways to increase the average height across the pack and get a good line-out option who's got an all-round skill set
and very physical,
very physical. This is a really highfalutin comparison, but a little bit of the Peter Steph Toy in that sense of being
ticking all those boxes.
Tall, rangy, great over, just madly flexible. His ability to jackal at that height is insane. To get that low in that good a position, I say he's still on his development curve. I think he's 23, maybe 24.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's got his medical studies as well, so it's all going to be up to him in terms of what he prioritizes. But what I would say is he's ticking a lot of boxes for the type of player Steve Borthwick likes.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's that tall is a huge bonus for him, because actually having someone who can be a genuine line-out option and threat, as well as bring in that kind of physicality around the park and be a jackal threat.
Yeah.
Those are three very high up priorities for international back rows at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess he's probably directly competing with Ted Hill, Chandler Cunningham-South.
Well, it doesn't seem like Ted Hill is fancied for whatever reason. Obviously, we don't know the reason, but he's not fancied, and he is injury prone. Chandler Cunningham-South, I think, is going to be in the mix, but whether they see him as a lock or a back row, we don't know. But as a solid 6 option, he's got to be in the running for it. He's got to be in. He's got to be at least on the long list.
Yeah, absolutely. I think other than Amika Ilione on the Leicester performance, I think Billy Searle's probably another name that I'd draw out. I think off the tee, he looks pretty dependable. He seems to have a pretty solid all-round game in the 10 shirt. It wasn't a noticeable difference when James O'Connor came on. But
I think Billy Searle started the season really well.
Yeah.
It was very good last week. Started really good this week. Obviously he had a bit of a journey since Worcester went under, and he's been around a little bit. I think he was in France last season. But what he is a very dependable 10, I think.
Yeah.
He's probably never going to go beyond being a starting 10 at a Prem level. But actually, you don't necessarily need that, particularly when you've got a pack like Leicester's.
Yeah.
To be an option with O'Connor and Bailey, I think he's pushing for that starting 10 shirt amongst all of those.
Yeah. I think you're quite right. But yeah, so the game itself, Northampton finishing the game with a bonus point, 32-26. It was very tight towards the end. Leicester were really pushing for it. Thankfully, Northampton were able to take advantage of a kind of misfiring Leicester Tigers line out and were able to kind of hold on to that and not have another second half collapse, which was good to see as a Saints fan. Moving on from Franklin's Gardens, we roll off into probably a game that you don't want to spend too much talking about, Rory, but it was the Bath Gloucester derby. Thoughts and feelings? Could have been worse.
Could have been worse.
You were predicting worse, I think. So
I was certainly concerned about it being worse. Look, I don't think anyone's particularly surprised to see Bath win this. We're going to run out very quickly this season for plaudits for this Bath team.
I'm already trying to think of new ways to describe how strong their pack is and how exciting it is to see their centres operate and Arundell looking good. Yeah, and
let's just rattle this off a little bit. Let's just rattle off some names. Ollie Lawrence, looking powerful, looking confident, scored a really good try physically right through the guts. Turnovers, big tackles, linking play, looks, if not back to his best, not far off.
Yeah.
Just absolutely superb. Max Ojomoh, all-round skill set. Working in tandem with Lawrence, really exciting prospect. Got to be something that England are looking at because they look a really good pairing together. His development curve is just continuously going up and up.
Yeah, still on the up.
Henry Arundell, we thought he was a bit shaky the first week of the season. Well, by week 3, he's looking pretty much superb. Virtually faultless. Poor for Will Joseph's try, but other than that, pretty much faultless. Finn Russell back, looking great. Obviously, got the yellow card and still looked brilliant. The other 70 minutes he was on the pitch. So, great. Well done them. Carl Smith came in at 9. Didn't feel like they missed Ben Spencer, so excellent. Great. And then in terms of the pack, whole front row, brilliant. really strong, really good scrum. Tom Dunn getting a try from the back of a maul, no surprises there. Ewan Richards getting a double, so good.
Hey, Rory, let's just stop there for a second and take a little bit of credit, pat ourselves on the back, because I think we may be the best talent spotters in rugby, because how long have we been banging on about Ewan Richards?
And I think we both tipped him at the start of the season to be the breakthrough player.
Yeah, so we I think our record is better than anyone's in spotting these talents. It's peerless. So
absolutely peerless.
So yeah, once again, we've been absolutely spot on. Unfortunately, that has meant that he really put a nail in the coffin on Gloucester's day by having
two really good tries.
Game.
I mean, to be fair, it would have been nice if Ross Byrne hadn't literally thrown the ball to him for one of those.
He was feeling generous.
He was feeling generous to Ewan there on that one. Really quick for the size of him.
Yeah. Do you know
Serious
what?
Bit of time.
You mentioned fantasy rugby earlier. I was this close to putting him in the team. And I didn't have another transfer, and I didn't want to lose the 4 points on the Super Brew, so I didn't do it, and I gutted. One thing, I know we've finished the Northampton game, but I did just want a quick shout out. Van der Mesht had his best game so far, but we'll move back onto your game.
On the up. Sorry, just keep rattling this through. Guy Pepper, mutant everywhere. Sam Underhill, mutant everywhere.
Is it scary that Bath almost sent out a rotated squad and still looked unbeatable?
It's just it's we will stop speculating at some point on how they're managing all of this, but you can't compete with that on an 18-week season. Just across 18 weeks, that level of class just rises above everyone else, doesn't it? It's impossible really to compete with that. There's maybe 2 or 3 teams in the league that might have a chance. All you've got to do, I think at this point, the rest of the teams are going to be like, look, if we get to the playoffs in a one-off game, we might be able to do it. Because across 18 weeks, ultimately, Bath are going to come top. And I think at this point, that's almost...
Yeah, it is scarily almost looks ominous. It's just whether they can go the entire game without losing at all. Because at the moment, I struggle to see where they lose a game. And I say this as a Northampton fan, and I've got the utmost belief that Northampton can beat them on their day. But at the moment, Bath just look different level to everyone else, which is quite scary.
I mean, you just look at the players they brought on. I mean, they brought on Santi Carreras and Chris Harris in a move of supreme trolling on their part.
Yeah.
Really upsetting for us to watch.
Thomas Dutoit.
Tuipulotu came on.
Yeah.
Who's one of the best up and coming hookers in the league. So not even their second choice hooker, third choice probably at this point.
Yeah.
Thomas Dutoit came on.
Best tight end in the world.
Best tight end in the world. Miles Reed, one of the most consistent Premiership performers for several years, came on. Alfie Barbie at least had the decency to not be able to catch a cold.
That was nice of him.
Yeah, but obviously outside of that is generally brilliant. It's just you're going to go, what are you going to do? What do we do?
Yeah, what do we do? Well, let's on Gloucester.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say, Will Joseph, his try was prime JJ. It was like watching his older brother at the Wreck again. It was almost uncannily identical to the way Jonathan Joseph played. Scarily.
Well, for the second week in a row, he's pulled out breaks like that. And actually, he pulled out 2 breaks in this game because he was responsible for Ben Loder's try as well with another superb break. In Will Joseph, I have hope that we've got a player with the game-breaking ability to drag us out of the rut that we're in. Seb Atkinson going off is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
As Max Llewellyn's out as well. That is real problems for us.
I think Gloucester are probably second behind Bristol in injury woes at the moment, aren't they? Closely followed by Northampton.
Yeah, it's really quite concerning for us on that front. But Will Joseph gives me real hope for salvaging something out this season. What doesn't is just the daft shit we do. Like, I mean, our line out on our maul is, barely pathetic at this point. It's, the one time we got the maul right, we managed to swing it all the way over the side and Ollie Thorley scored in the corner.
Yeah.
So you go, right, well, if you can do it, we've got enough in this. We've got enough in this team to be able to do. But we knocked on 2 or 3 at the line out. Similar to Newcastle in their game. You just go, well, it's unforgivable at this level to make basic errors like that from good players. You know, it's the likes of Freddie Thomas, a Welsh international, and one of the best players in the league last season,
for sure,
making that kind of mistake. You know, Seb Blake was superb for us last season. It looked like a proper breakout season.
I think your set piece has kind of fallen apart a bit, hasn't it? Like, because Jack Innard's been much the same.
Jack Innard's struggling. I mean, I don't know what it is. You know, it's difficult to pin these things down. You know, and so that, you know, we've said it's not easy to nail these things, but really, it's unforgivable for a professional team to make that kind of level of basic mistake. I mean, Ross Byrne has.
What are your thoughts on him as a signing so far?
See, things on paper, it was a brilliant signing. You know, at all the attributes you want. Irish international was at one point the heir apparent to Johnny Sexton, and then just sort of got sandwiched between Sexton and Prendergast, and what's his chops at Munster?
Crowley.
Carberry. So basically, right player, wrong time. Needed game time, but he's got all the attributes. You know, he's seemingly got all the game management, the kicking ability. There was no real sign that he wasn't up to it physically at Leinster. Obviously, just helped by the fact that he had Leinster pack.
That does help. That definitely helps.
Because at the moment, he's a complete liability in defence, and he's making base for Ewan Richards for the kick chase back, and he dives on it and somehow manages to throw it forward over his own head, having dived backwards for it. I watched it again. I don't know the physics of this. I don't know the physics of how he's managed this.
Yeah,
and you know, you couple that with general and I mean, fortunately, we've just got in a coach from Saracens to focus on the breakdown. Another former London Irish coach, whose name's just escaped the top of my head. But our breakdown work is poor. I don't know. It's at the moment. Right, three games in, it's looking pretty dire. I mean, we've got Bristol this weekend. I mean, if you can't beat Bristol at the moment, you know, if you can't beat the Walking Dead, then you know you shouldn't be in the league. So hopefully we get our first win of the season this weekend. But at this point, it's looking pretty dire. We're in desperate need of some backup at loose head.
Yeah.
We need to sort out the line out. At the moment, teams are just picking us off, and we've got to get some go forward. I mean, we picked probably close to our biggest available pack on Saturday. So, you know, Cam Jordan Alemano in second row, but Freddie Thomas and Basham in the back row, and still were barely able to cling on physically. And you know, admittedly, against that Bath pack, it's tough whatever you do.
Yeah, but no one's able to cling on to them at the moment.
But at the moment, it's after what was such a positive season, and you know, I was really optimistic going into the season because I thought with the signings we've made and the players we still have there, I thought we've got the squad to really do something this season. Obviously, the injuries haven't helped that. We've had to throw in way too many new signings too early.
Yeah,
but it's difficult to justify some of the mistakes at the moment.
Yeah, I think some of them are inexcusable, really. But if you're listening, you're probably thinking I'm about to say Bath won 90 points to 0. But it was only 38-17, Rory. You managed to score some points at the Rec, scored a couple of nice tries, a few little glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
There are teams...
There are glimmers there. There are glimmers there. Like there are points. In every game this season, there's been points where I've thought we look like one of the best attacking teams in the league.
That second half against Northampton.
Yeah, but we can only manage it for short periods. If we could put it in for even 60 minutes, we'd probably win games by 10, 15 points. But
yeah, I think
we managed sort of 5 minutes.
Another question for you, Rory, and I'm saying this slightly tongue-in-cheek. Thomas Williams, are we seeing someone who had a long summer, had his injury, obviously, hasn't quite hit the levels we saw last season yet? Are we seeing that connection with Ross Byrne just not being there yet? Because we're not seeing the best of him.
Yeah, I think partly it's the connection with Ross Byrne, and I think it's partly because the pack's not getting go forward. I actually don't and you know, I could be accused of just being a bit one-eyed when it comes to Thomas because I absolutely adore him, but I actually don't think this falls on Thomas at the moment. I think the problems are. I think he's sandwiched between two big problems, which is a pack that isn't getting go forward and a 10 who is, if we're being generous, struggling to settle.
Yeah, they seem to be on very different wavelengths, put it that way. And that wavelength is also different when you get beyond 10 to 12, 13, 14, 11 and 15, which I think is part of the problem at the moment. But there's still time. Time is a healer, Rory. Have faith. Now, as I said, so that game ended 38-17 to Bath. Yet another bonus point victory for Bath. Let's just see how that train keeps on rolling, because I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Moving into the Sunday fixture, the battle for London, North versus South. Well, slightly north. Well, kind of outside of London versus South London.
Hey, it's the battle between London's original club and London's original club.
Yeah,
it's the Clash Royale.
It's the clash of the Gilets. Harlequins versus Saracens at the Stoop.
Yeah.
This was an interesting game, Rory, for many reasons. We both called this one very wrong. Now, my one question to you, Rory, was this a perfectly executed game plan from Harlequins, or did they just get lucky with the low sun?
I mean, it could be both. I genuinely think this was a masterclass in game management from Marcus Smith.
Yeah. Man reborn.
Well, probably I think a man on a bit of a mission to prove that he's
still a fly half.
Well, not what everyone keeps saying he is. And good, because obviously the gauntlet's been thrown down by obviously Finn Smith and more so by George Ford in terms of what they've done in England shirts this calendar year. I think Marcus Smith he looks in this game particularly, he looks like he'd come back with a very specific point to prove, and he proved it time and time and time again. He barely put a foot wrong strategically on this one. And it was, this was not a game for a team with the strapline of being the great entertainers.
No, it was definitely a different style from Harlequins that we're used to.
They completely switched it up, and they just went full physical, backed up by Guido Petti in particular, who
very impressed.
He hit the ground running. Rodrigo Isgro, absolutely dovetailing with Marcus Smith's kicking game. Perfect.
We said last week, is their Argentinian quad going to be a difference maker? I think they were, because I think the two props that came on really put a bit of pressure on at the scrum as well. Delgado and Wagner.
I love Boris Wenger is my new favourite player, I think. He just...
he was born to be a prop.
He couldn't look more like a prop if he tried.
Especially in that moment where he didn't score his try and his arse crack was hanging out and you could see his pants. That's so prop-like. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Just an absolute lack of shame and personal hygiene. No, I thought Quins absolutely executed on the game plan. They were so physical in defence from basically minute one. Marcus's try really well taken, but it all came off the back of just beating Sarries physically. Jack Kenningham looked really good carrying in this one.
Yeah.
I thought, he's obviously dovetails with Will Evans as a poacher in this team a lot of time, but his ball carrying was really physical in this. I loved Cunningham-South versus Tom Willis. That was
brilliant, wasn't it?
That is a white-collar boxing match I'd pay to go and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was it felt deliberate from Chandler Cunningham-South. It's almost like they deliberately put him in the 8 shirt this week for that matchup. And I would argue, although Tom Willis actually still had some impressive stats coming out of this game, like visually and vibes based, I'd say Cunningham-South probably got the upper hand in this game.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. I thought, eyebrows were probably raised picking him at 8 this week. Obviously Don Brent's the senior 8 at the club, but he looked like another player with a point to prove. But he just looked like a player who was given the absolute freedom to go and impose his game, which is that physicality. Both sides of the ball, but some of the hits he put in were monstrous.
Some huge hits.
You could be forgiven forgetting in this game that Quins almost had another try, having turned the ball over at the scrum as he came out of the tunnel, but Marcus nearly had 2 tries in this game.
Yeah.
It's actually quite weird to talk about Saracens as looking quite frail, but they look properly rattled in this one.
They did. I think what Harlequins done is that they identified that if you stop Saracens go forward, you kind of stop them at source, and they lost all momentum. And I think we know that Saracens run primarily off of Tom Willis breaking tackles and then creating chaos behind the gain line. You stop him from doing that, and Ben Earl wasn't able to do it. Onyama Christie wasn't able to do it. Theo Dan wasn't really able to do it. Done it a couple of times early on in the first half, but not much after that. Perhaps that they suffered from losing Nick Tompkins to the HIA and having to stay off the pitch, but...
He's got Cinti there.
They still got Cinti there.
For Argentina.
He did. I think maybe the identification from Harlequins that they did have a relatively inexperienced pair of wingers. So Cinti probably... It may have been different if Cinti stayed on the wing, but Jackson, Richards and Bracken probably not used to being peppered by the high ball. Malins did not have a good game at the back under the high ball. Whether it was related to the sun, I don't know, but it can't have helped. But it just feels like Harlequins identified a weakness in Saracens' game plan that I hadn't spotted. Obviously, they did.
No, but I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing identifying that. It's another thing executing it and winning the game off the back of it against a team as ruthless as Saracens. And
yeah, absolutely.
As probably me in particular, but we have criticised Quins a lot early part of the season and last season. Hats off to win this one, because not the prettiest game to watch in the world, but in terms of the bits of rugby I like around the physicality and the confrontation and just being gritty and digging in, absolute, hats off, superb performance from them.
So Harlequins, you can still be labelled the great entertainers to us if you keep playing in that vein. So if you were a Harlequins fan, Rory, which I know is going to be really hard for you to imagine.
Mindset. Oh, bro, come on then. What?
Would you want them to continue playing this style of rugby? Because I think this would still be effective against other teams. Or would you want them to revert back to what they were doing the other 2 weeks and last season?
I think you have to accept that there are games when you need to go into this mode and you need to have this as a weapon in your arsenal. They will probably need to play that way against Bath or Sale. I think they'll get less change out of the kicking game. So they'll probably need to find another way to get up the field. But the mindset of their defence will need to be the same.
Yeah. Pin them back and don't let them through.
Well, I mean, this is one of the issues we didn't really touch on in the Bath game. It's so difficult to find space in their backfield because their kicking game's so good as well.
Yeah.
And they cover the backfield really well. You could probably just about expose Thockin Singer if no one's covering him. You might be able to expose Arundell, but if they've got Santi or Tom de Glanville or Finn Russell also covering in the backfield, it's just difficult to find the green spaces there.
Yeah, that's why it's so scary when Santi does become their starter. Because
yeah. But
scary.
If you can, you basically would have to be inch perfect with your kicking game against Bath, and you probably would have to be close because Sale's back three, Robart, Carpenter and Woodburn if he's starting. O'Flaherty.
Come on, it's first names you usually get wrong, not last names.
I know, sorry. O'Flaherty. They're all very good under the high ball and very good at covering the backfield. So it's difficult, but the fact that they have this they've proved they have this in their arsenal. They've not got the excuse now of, we just couldn't get our running game going. Fine, get your kicking game going.
Yeah. And what we did see, certainly in this game, was Marcus Smith being inch perfect with his kicking.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll need. It's just whether he can do that week in, week out.
But if he can, he suddenly becomes the man that everyone wants to see in that 10 shirt again for England. And that's what he's got to prove.
Yeah.
Because actually, if he can do the kicking game even 95% as well as George Ford, suddenly you think, well, yeah, but Marcus has got the running game as well. If he can be as solid enough indeed to 95% of Finn Smith, he's like, yeah, but Marcus Smith has got the running game. And actually, that's the thing. If Marcus Smith can prove those other components are not deficiencies, like he did in this performance, well, suddenly the fact that he's got a running game like a Carlos Spencer suddenly becomes like, oh, well, you have to pick him now because he's got the whole thing. Yeah,
I think an in-form Marcus Smith is almost undroppable. It's just getting him in form, which is what we were saying all last season. He didn't look the player we're used to seeing. If he's suddenly coming into form, different story.
He probably has to say, look, I'm not a fullback and I don't want to play fullback.
I do feel like he does need to come out and say something like that. Otherwise, he's just going to keep getting this confusing messaging and getting moved. I'm guessing it probably disrupts his flow, disrupts the momentum he builds. So let's see how the season goes. He's only just come back from the Lions tour. But that game itself, Rory, ended 2014 to Harlequins. Not one we saw coming. Real spanner in the works to Saracens. Really, really enjoyed the Harlequins social media post afterwards.
Good stuff. Really, really enjoying that kind of work.
Yeah, other clubs start getting on this because it's really quite enjoyable to watch. Some real good and creative stuff from these social media teams. So come on, other clubs, get on board, start doing the same, because it was a perfect opportunity for all the other clubs to do something similar. Sadly, it only seems to be going on in London. London town. But before we move on, Rory, well, not before we move on. We'll move on. Quick fire predictions for round 4. We didn't do too badly last. I think I got 3 out of 4. 3 out of 5. You got 4 out of 5, I think. Round 4. Quick fire predictions. Starting off Friday night. Gloucester versus Bristol at Kingsholm.
I've got to back us. I think Gloucester will win this, particularly if Genge is injured, if Tom Jordan's banned. I've just got to think at this point we'll have to get the win. I'm going to back us to win this by 10.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think Gloucester have to win this. If not, they are. I don't know what's happened to the team.
I don't know where we go if we don't.
I don't know what's happened to the team I was watching last year. I've never seen such a drop off. If you don't win that game, it's a monumental drop off. So hopefully that doesn't happen. The other Friday night game, Newcastle Red Bulls versus Northampton Saints.
Yeah, I mean, but not just because you're the Northampton Saints. I'd love to be able to back Newcastle to pull a result out on this one, but unless Northampton suddenly get flu throughout the camp and have to turn up with the under 18s, I've got to think Northampton are going to win this one by 15.
Yeah, so Northampton haven't historically travelled that well to Kingston Park. We've had a fair few quite close games there, but I do think I just think your pack's your pack could shred them. I think the pack will shred them, and I think our backs will probably be able to break quite a few holes. So I suspect at least a bonus point win. 15 probably feels about right. So yeah, in agreement there. Okay, Saturday, Leicester Tigers versus Bath Rugby at the Mattioli Woods, Welford Road.
Yeah, this is actually a tougher one to call than you think, because it's Tigers at home. It's Tigers' other historic derby or historic rivalry. And Tigers have probably got a pack that can get close to, if not parity, with Bath, just on physicality. But on the other hand, I just can't see anyone beating Bath. So I think Bath I think it'll be close. I think this will be Bath by 5 or less.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I think Bath by 10 or less. The way they're just so inevitable at the moment, I can see them kind of getting 2 scores ahead and just maintaining that, like just keeping an 8-point lead. So that's where I see that one going. I just can't see Bath losing at the moment. Next game, tasty game. Saracens versus Sale.
Yeah, another tough one to call, but I'm gonna say that Saracens bounce back on this one. And I think it'll be Saracens by 5 to 10 points.
I think you're right. I think there will be a reaction. One thing I've learnt about watching Saracens is that when they lose a game, there's usually an immediate reaction from the team. And their next game after a loss that they've, especially against Harlequins, they've generally had an absolute stormer the week after. Sale, yeah, although they do have George Ford, they do have this back 3 that are really exciting, and they do have a pack that's very exciting. I think Saracens have the players to match it. So yeah, I'm going to back Saracens, but again, I think close. I think within 7 points difference.
Yeah.
And then Exeter Chiefs, Sandy Park, hosting Harlequins with their new way of playing. Tricky one.
Yeah, it's actually a tricky one. And bucking the trend a little here, I think this might be where Chiefs going to win. I think Chiefs might sneak this one by 5 and under.
Okay. In order for there to be a differentiation between our predictions, I'm going to back Harlequins to kind of back up their prediction, their performance from last week. Marcus Smith to continue this and to really show that he can pull the strings. But I agree. I think this is going to be really close. I don't think there's going to be much in it. I think this may be one that's within 3 points, and I'm going to back Harlequins to win this one, perhaps with a penalty taking the lead in the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, but this one's a real coin flip for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, that's round 4 covered, Rory. Before we move on to your final thoughts, I posted something on our social media channels today about a team of the year so far. Did you have any thoughts or feelings about that? I think I had Abano, Jabulu, Sogbon, Alex Coles, Joe Batley, Tom Pearson, Will Evans, Tom Willis, Ben Spencer, Tony Bellew, Hutchinson, Nick Tompkins, Faye Roboso, Arundell, and Tyrone Green at fullback. Is there anyone I've got horrendously wrong before we bring this podcast to a close?
Nothing horrendous. I mean, I still think George Ford's been the form 10. For me, George Ford's been the best 10 in the league. But outside of that, probably wouldn't have too many quibbles. Maybe Van Rijn for Sale.
Interesting.
But I think he might have just edged it over Coles for me, but that would be probably nitpicking on my part.
Van Rijn ahead of Bamba?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Bamba's been great, but I think what Van Rijn's done, given that he's also the skipper now as well, I think he's made a real difference in that pack. But that's a bit of a coin flip. I'd be nitpicking.
Yeah, and that's not like you, Rory. Why agonise over the details?
I'm famously magnanimous.
Absolutely. But who knows? This time next week, it may be a whole different 15. I'll keep revisiting it through the year. I won't do it every round because it'll get a bit boring if I did it every round. But we'll see. Maybe in December, I'll see what the team of the year is looking like. But for now, Rory, it's time for your final thought. Do you have a final thought for the listener before we bring episode 6 of season 2 to a close?
Up the gloss, up the shed. The season starts from now. Everyone starts on 0 points. Everything else is a wash up at this point.
I started the jingle too early, but I don't care. We've been Rucks Balls and Oval Balls. This has been episode 6. Hope you've enjoyed listening to us this week. Like, subscribe, follow. Just, generally enjoy listening to us. And we'll be back next week with some more rugby nonsense. Bye-bye.